Alright, welcome back to the channel everybody. I am an avid herpetologist coming with another deep dive video going over an archetype in the Digimon TCG. Today we're going to be talking about BlackWargreymon. Now a lot of people tend to refer to this deck as Gaiomon now, as that is one of the primary things you're going to run alongside of BlackWargreymon himself. But I'm going to be talking about a couple of the different ways you can run this deck today. Not all of them involve Gaiomon, so we're going to just collectively refer to what we're going to be talking about as BlackWargreymon. Now this deck really started to come into popularity around BT8 with this guy, who has kind of become the centerpiece of the deck. This is BT8 BlackWargreymon. Now, just to right off the bat, I want to take a moment to just appreciate how awesome this card looks. I mean, can we just take a second and talk about how incredible the artwork on this card is? I know that there's an alternate art. I choose to run the original by choice. I just think this artwork is absolutely incredible. Really captures how amazingly awesome this character is alongside the card itself. BlackWargreymon does tend to be a very traditional stack building deck. However, a lot of the effects that this deck is going to be able to push forward are actually fairly unique, especially the ones that we're going to be seeing from BlackWargreymon himself. So we're going to be talking a little bit about each one of the stages that this deck is able to accomplish, talk about each one of our levels and all of the options that you can run at each one of those. And yeah, just give you some general ideas if you're interested in building a BlackWargreymon deck. Just want to highlight some of the directions you can go with the deck, because there's actually quite a few ways you can choose to do it. Once again, much like my Machinedramon deep dive video, you're going to notice I have 4 eggs in front of me. However, these 4 eggs can each be used in a couple of the different ways that the deck can be built. It honestly just kind of comes down to personal preference. Each one of the eggs is fairly similar. They've got very similar effects, but the ones that you're going to choose for your particular build will vary depending on which card choices you choose to go with, if you decide to tech anything, things of that nature. So we're going to go through each one of these. The first one, which I've noticed to be kind of the more common one that you'll see in a BlackWargreymon traditional build, is Koromon from BT5. This has an on-attacking effect where if this Digimon's name has Omnimon or Greymon in its name, other than a select few, you can trigger a draw 1. So a pretty standard egg, just let you draw a card when you're attacking with any of your Greymons. You also have our next option here. This is Gorymon. Gorymon is a little more generic with a when attacking. If this Digimon has 6,000 DP or more, also draw a card. You'll find that a lot of the builds that BlackWargreymon is pushing right now has Greymons that also just either already are at 6,000 DP or are going to be boosted up to 6,000 DP. There are also some variants that run less copies of Greymon, which I'll get into those in a second, but this is going to probably be your more generic egg if you're looking for like a multicolor black and red hybrid build. Going a pretty decent amount of detail for that one. That's actually the build I personally like to run for BlackWargreymon. I think it's a ton of fun. Next up is going to be Koromon from BT9. This is our most recent egg you can use for this deck. It's just your turn. While this Digimon has Agumon or Greymon in its name, it gets plus 1,000 DP. So rather than going the draw cards route, this is going to be a DP gainer, which will help you get over opposing Digimon and survive security checks. And our last egg, which I'm including for the spice factor. I've actually got a friend at my locals who loves BlackWargreymon, and I'm including this one for him, as he kind of introduced me to the idea that black base, or specifically black eggs in a BlackWargreymon deck, can be really spicy. And I'm specifically going to talk about a rookie option that you can choose to run. It really doesn't actually change a whole heck of a lot. Most cards in BlackWargreymon are able to digivolve on black or red, depending on the route that you go. So black can be a potential spicy option for you as well. Hotmon says while you have a black Tamer in play, this Digimon gets plus 1,000 DP. So again, it's just a pretty generic DP gaining egg. We are going to be running some black eggs specifically in more black and red centric builds instead of just mono red. So Hotmon is going to hopefully be live in those particular builds, but again, we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. So with our eggs out of the way, we're going to talk about our rookie lineup. Now, the rookie lineup can actually vary a pretty decent amount depending on the build that you're choosing to go with. Give myself a little more space here. There are a couple of things that are going to stay fairly consistent. The 2 primary ways you're going to see people running BlackWargreymon is either going to be Agumon and Greymon centric, or more commonly now as of BT9, there is a multicolor black and red hybrid, not hybrid the card type, as in black and red combined cards style build. And each one has their merits, just like always. And we're going to talk a little bit about what those changes and differences are. But some of the common cards you're going to see regardless of the build you run are going to be these guys. These are going to be the deck's primary searchers. So both of these have an on play that are very similar to one another. They are both 3 to play, 2000 DP. The black one can digivolve onto red eggs and black eggs, so he is going to be seen in more of your split builds, while the red one is probably going to be more reserved for mono red builds or hybrid red base builds. You'll kind of see where we're going as we kind of slowly progress through our stages here, how you're going to want to pick your card choices. But they have very similar effects. We'll talk about BT8 Agumon first, Black Agumon. On play, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. You can add 1 card with Greymon in its name and a Dragonkin in its traits, and a card with Dragonkin in its traits from among them to your hand. Place the remaining on the bottom in any order. So this is cool because since our BlackWargreymons are considered Dragonkin, we can reveal our top 4. If we hit any of our level 5 or 4 Greymons, we can add them. We can also add any copies of Dragonkin. Our BlackWargreymons and Gaiomons, if you're running that, they are all Dragonkin, so you can add 2 cards off of this pretty consistently. In fact, some builds are even running a Dragonkin in our level 4 slot, and again, we'll talk about that in a second. Our second Agumon is again on play, this time revealing 3 cards from the top of your deck. Add 1 Digimon with Greymon in its name, and or a Digimon card with Omnimon in its name from among them to your hand. Again, placing the rest on the bottom in any order. So both of these are pretty redundant. They're basically just trying to find you your pieces at different levels to help smooth out your curve and help you get your ladder going. But these are not going to be the only things we're running. We've got plenty of other rookie options here, and lots of them are, of course, going to be Agumon. The first one that you're going to see in a very wide range of builds is going to be our promo Agumon here. This is 3 to play, 2000 DP, with an inheritable that says, while this Digimon has Greymon in its name, it gets plus 2000 DP. This obviously is going to matter as we get to our upper end. Our Metal Greymons can now swing in with much bigger DPs. Our BlackWargreymons are going to swing over pretty much anything. So that 2000 DP is going to be probably the best generic inheritable you're going to have for a BlackWargreymon deck, but not all decks are running it. If you decide that you're going to be running a black base, you may want to just go ahead and omit this card. There are reasons to do that. In fact, one of the big ones is that Gaiomon, who again we're going to talk about later, has an effective de-digivolve when it comes into play. So that DP gain may not be as relevant if you know that you're already going to be swinging into something that you have de-digivolved. So there are reasons that you could choose not to play this, but if you are going to be running a red base, I would almost say that it's mandatory. This is, like I said, the best generic inheritable you're going to have for this deck. So if you're looking for any kind of DP gain, that is going to be where you're going. Now there are 2 other smaller, or less generic, I should say, DP gain effects that you can use. We have Agumon from Structure Deck 7. Excuse me. This Digimon has an inheritable where when this Digimon attacks a player, it gets plus 2000 DP for the turn. We also have Agumon from Structure Deck number 1, the original starter deck, with a generic inheritable that just says anytime this inheritable is there, it gets 1000 DP. So it's more generic than our 2000 DP gain Agumon, but at the sacrifice of an extra 1000. So if you're going to be running a more generic red and black split, the 1000 may be better for you, depending on what build you're deciding to play. This Agumon has an inheritable that says when it attacks a player, it just gets plus 2000 DP until the end of the turn. So this, again, is going to give you that nice 2000 buff on any of your Digimon, but only when you're attacking security. So each one of these is, of course, going to have their trade-offs. As you're building your BlackWargreymon deck, I would say keep all of these different inheritables in mind. They are important. If you decide to play a full Agumon base, you also have the potential of playing Agumon X Antibody. Now, Agumon X Antibody and X Antibody support as a whole is, of course, very popular right now. Deck is extremely strong. Being able to get extra draws for basically no memory, potentially even gaining memory if you have specific Tamers in play, is, of course, going to be great. This Agumon also has the convenient ability for both on play and when digivolving. Reveal the top 3 of your deck, and again, add a copy of either a card with Greymon or Omnimon in its name, and an X Antibody option card, or sorry. 1 card with Greymon or Omnimon in its name, and 1 X Antibody. So yes, the option card X Antibody from among them to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom in any order. So this card is, like I said, it's going to be good for those decks that are trying to really capitalize on X Antibody. I'm actually playing 2 copies of this despite not playing any other X Antibodies, just because it does have a generic on play / when digivolving, so it's extra tutoring if you really need it. So that's going to be another one of the options you can play. Now we're going to be moving into specifically cards that are going to be used in the black and red hybrid base, and that is going to be copies of Tamers. Now this is a card that I do run 4 of in my primary deck, and you'll see why a little bit later. This card can digivolve onto black or red, and has an inheritable on all turns, where if the Digimon has 2 or more colors, it gets plus 1000 DP. So this is, again, another good generic inheritable. Definitely going to be better than our structure deck Agumon for plus 1000 because it is all turns at the low cost of just having a Digimon that is more than 1 color. Spoiler, if you are going to be playing the hybrid base with both colors, black and red, all of your Digimon above rookie level are going to be 2 color. So that's basically an inheritable where they are always going to have that plus 1000 DP. But if you're talking about the black base specifically, there is another rookie you can run that really doesn't hurt your consistency in any way, and that is going to be BlackWargreymon. BlackWargreymon is in a pretty good spot in the meta right now, where this card has a security effect, unusual for a rookie. At the end of the battle, trigger D-Digivolve 1 on one of your opponent's Digimon. So basically the idea is that this is going to be your anti-OTK card. If you're playing a black base, it doesn't really hurt your consistency at all because you can just drop it on top of your black Hotmon eggs. But you're probably not going to want to be running this card if you're on red base, any of our red eggs, just because obviously you're not going to be able to put it over your eggs, you're not going to get that draw, and otherwise it's just a 3 memory to play 1000 DP Digimon, which is not very strong. He's basically just there to be free filtering in your hand and a security threat, ideally, that your opponent is going to be running into. So these are all just really fun options. When you are building BlackWargreymon, kind of decide the general route that you want to go. All of these are good options, and there's plenty of other rookies that you'll be able to play, but these are going to be some of the most common you're going to see played in this particular deck. So we're going to move on up to our level 4s. Now our level 4s, again, are going to be a pretty good split between cards of the Greymon variety, as well as some other black and red hybrid cards, and you'll again pick which ones you want to play depending on the strategy you end up going with. Now the most common copies of things you're going to see at level 4, we're going to start with this guy. This is Structure Deck 1 Greymon. If you are not familiar with this card and don't already have copies, he is not cheap to pick up. I think he's currently hovering around $20. He is a generic inheritable that just gives security attack plus 1. He has very average stats for a champion, being 5 to play, 4000 DP, and only 2 to Digivolve. So this is the card that's going to let you get a lot of extra aggression off of your level 5s and 6s. For that reason, it is going to be very widely played. We are also going to see a lot of copies of Greymon from BT5. This is a Greymon, again, 5 to play, this time 5000 DP. It is 2 to Digivolve. However, if you are Digivolving outside of Raising Area, so you can benefit from the when Digivolving effect, if this Digimon has Agumon in its Digivolution cards, gain a memory. So it's basically 1 to Digivolve. Now, granted, if they do have a memory blocker, do keep in mind that you're not going to get that memory back. It's just going to be 2 to Digivolve, but even still, as long as there's no memory blocker in play, yeah, it is going to be 1 to Digivolve. So he's going to bridge up into your stacks very quickly, which is super appealing. He also has an inheritable where while this Digimon has Omnimon or Greymon in its name, it gets plus 2000 DP. Now these two tend to be the bread and butter for a lot of BlackWargreymon decks because they're very generic and powerful. We also are going to see a lot of copies of, again, if you go the X-Antibody route, Greymon X-Antibody, which is 5 to play, 6000 DP, as I mentioned, that triggers Gorymon, 2 to Digivolve. However, you can also Digivolve it for 0 onto one of your Greymon. Now, all turns, it has an inheritable where when this Digimon with Greymon or Omnimon in its name would be deleted by a card effect or returned to your hand or deck, you may trash 2 cards of the same level in this Digimon Digivolution card to prevent it from leaving play. So basically, as long as you have successfully Digivolved this onto one of your Greymon, or if you Digivolved Agumon onto an Agumon, as long as you have 2 Digivolution cards of the same level, he's going to make your stacks much harder to deal with. Now, it does not protect from destruction by battle. That is something that you need to make sure you're keeping in mind when playing this deck, especially if you do go the X-Antibody route. So that's just going to be something to definitely keep in mind. Now, the most common times that I see people playing Greymon X-Antibody, they're going for the full X-Antibody list. With that being said, it's not going to be running the same way as, for instance, a Wargreymon X list is. And I'll explain why that is later. Specifically, you're not going to see a lot of the X-Antibody option card. And again, I'll explain why in a bit. But a lot of people do still play these because, again, it's good draw power and it's going to grind through your deck very quickly. If you're spicy like me and you're looking for something maybe off-brand that you want to play just to maybe surprise your opponent or mix things up, you can also consider copies of Geogreymon. Specifically, this is Geogreymon from Structure Deck 7. That is the Guilmon structure deck. It has 6 to play, 5000 DP, 2 to Digivolve. It has a security effect where if this is checked as security, you can play it without paying its memory cost, and on play, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So it's an extra body for aggression out of your security, as well as potential removal for anything that is low to the ground. I don't see a lot of decks running this, but again, we're here on a Spice channel talking about brews. He is absolutely an option you can consider if you want to try to mix things up, maybe do something a little different. Moving now into our black options, we also have a card that you're going to see a lot of different builds running, and that is Greymon from BT8. This is going to be the first of our black cards, and it is, in my opinion, one of the best. It is 5 to play, 6000 DP again. It is 2 to Digivolve on a black or a red rookie. It has the inheritable, where on the opponent's turn, while you have a red Digimon in play, this Digimon gains blocker. Now again, if you want to go with a full red and black hybrid build, even though he himself is not both colors, you're definitely going to want to be playing him because he is going to Digivolve on both bodies, while also providing a really nice inheritable. Everything above this in the hybrid build is going to be able to Digivolve on both colors anyways, so he's not going to cost you anything in consistency, but that blocker inheritable is definitely going to come in clutch when you're playing some very high-powered, excuse me, very high-powered megas. If you are going to be playing the hybrid build, this is where your real spice starts to come into play. We're going to talk about our red and black hybrid champions that you're going to want to be running. One of the biggest and best of them just came out in a promo pack, and that is going to be this copy of Deltamon, Promo Deltamon. Now this Deltamon is 5 to play, 6000 DP. It's actually 3 to evolve on your level 3 rookies, and can Digivolve again onto black or red. But it's in-play effect and inheritable that you really want to be seeing. Its effect is on your turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve into a card with 2 colors or composite in its traits, reduce that Digivolution cost by 2. That is going to be a big theme for BlackWargreymon decks, is Digivolving for cheaper. This is one of the many ways you can go about it, but it's definitely going to be best in decks that are really trying to lean in to the black and red stat line. So he is going to be one of your absolute best cards to see. Other options you can play include Monochromon here. Monochromon is a 5 to play, 6000 DP, 2 to Digivolve blocker. It has the very typical stat line of when attacking, you're going to lose memory, but because he has 2 colors, he has the additional downside of losing 3 memory instead of 2. With that being said, though, he is still a 2-color Digimon. He is still going to suit the theme and is a nice low-to-the-ground blocker if you need a little bit of extra protection. And then the last champion we're going to be playing potentially is Cyclonemon. Now the Cyclonemon has some extra synergies that we need to make sure we address, because he's going to be the Dragonkin that you can play at level 4, who is also both colors. So he has a lot of potential synergies with the deck. So if you are playing Black Agumon, and you reveal, for instance, Cyclonemon and any number of other cards that contain Greymon, you can add him as your Dragonkin, and then whatever copy of Greymon you want. Now, Cyclonemon is, again, 5 to play, 5000 DP, 2 to Digivolve on a black or red, and has a when attacking inheritable to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 2000 DP or less. Is that a lot? No, not really. But you're not really playing him for the inheritable as much as you are the consistency that he provides. And that inheritable is just there as a little bit of extra text. If you're worried about potential memory blockers, as long as they're lower than 3000 DP, you'll be able to pop them. So he is an extra little fun thing that you can use. But yeah, that's going to definitely be it for our champion line. Super, super cool. We got a lot of really unique options for different types of aggression, different types of utility. You're probably already starting to see why this deck is so much fun. There are a couple of different routes you can go with it, and all of these cards have some really neat effects that you're not going to see in a lot of other builds. Now we're going to move up into our ultimate line. Now our ultimate line is definitely going to be a mouthful to talk about. We have quite a few options to go with. Since most decks typically are only going to be playing 2, maybe 3 unique names in their level 5 slots, the combination that you're going to want to use is going to vary wildly. One of the most common ones you're going to see, however, is going to be Metal Greymon from EX1. This card is pretty cheap to evolve at only 3, which is, I guess, average for an ultimate. 7 to play, 7000 DP, with an on-attacking ability that says you can destroy, if it is attacking a player, you can just delete an opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So pretty generically good there. And it also has an inheritable where your turn, while the Digimon has Machine or Dragonkin, BlackWargreymon, in its name or in its traits, it gains Piercing. So it lets your BlackWargreymons and other things at your level 6 slots start piercing through when they attack into other Digimon. So super awesome there. The next most common version of Metal Greymon we're going to see, because we are playing, again, quite a few Metal Greymons in these slots, is going to be Metal Greymon from BT8. This is, in my opinion, one of the strongest level 5s in the entire game. Not all versions of BlackWargreymon want to run it, but you are definitely going to want to see it if you are running black and red, and most of the Greymon versions are probably going to want to be running this card as well, just because it is so generically strong. Specifically, this card is 8 memory to play, 8,000 DP, has a Digivolution cost of 4 on a black or a red, and when Digivolving, you can de-Digivolve 1 on one of your opponent's Digimon, then delete one of their Digimon if it has 3,000 DP or less. This card is incredible for getting board control while you are just building your stack like you normally would. It's got 8,000 DP, which is pretty tall for a level 5, and it has, I think, one of the most insane inheritables in the entire game. While this Digimon has Dragonkin or Machine in its traits, it can also attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. One of the big differences between BlackWargreymon builds versus regular Wargreymon X decks is that this deck does tend to lean a lot more into board control. It has a lot of deletion effects, it has a lot of ways to control what your opponent is doing, and having the ability to attack into an unsuspended Digimon is absolutely crazy. It basically lets you lock the board down and forces your opponent to play out of their raising area. Being able to control the way that your opponent is playing and force them to do lines that may not be optimal is going to be super, super strong. If you do decide to go the pure Greymon route, there's going to be a few other cards you can choose to run. Once again, we're going to have Metal Greymon X Antibody. This card is 8 to play, and again, 8,000 DP. It is only 3 to Digivolve, so a little bit of an improvement there. It has a when Digivolving effect that says this Digimon gains Security Attack +1. Then, if this Digimon has Metal Greymon or the option card X Antibody in its Digivolution cards, it additionally gains an extra 3,000 DP until the end of your opponent's next turn, essentially bringing it up to 11,000 outside of any other buffs. So this guy is a great way to provide some level 5 aggression. It is able to Digivolve for 0 onto a Metal Greymon, though it is worth mentioning that these two Metal Greymons will not give their inheritable to this guy because he is not a cyborg, or not a Dragonkin or a Machine. He is a cyborg. There's another very similar card you can also see a lot of people running right now, which is the new promo Metal Greymon Alteris mode. This again is able to Digivolve for 0 from Metal Greymon, but also has an effect where its name is just treated as Metal Greymon. It's worth mentioning that this Metal Greymon, if you have a Metal Greymon X Antibody in play, you cannot stack another one on top of it. The inclusion of X Antibody does make it a different card name. But since Alteris mode has an effect that specifically makes it considered a Metal Greymon, you can actually stack more copies of this card in the same pile, which is really neat. He also has a when Digivolving effect. If you have a Tamer in play, delete one of your opponent's Digimon 5,000 DP or less. So getting over that 4,000 DP cusp that a lot of the old Greymon support was kind of stuck on. It also has, again, a pretty good generic inheritable, similar to Greymon X Antibody, where all turns, if this Digimon has Greymon or Omnimon, and would be deleted or returned to the hand or deck, trash 2 cards of the same level in the Digivolution cards to prevent it from leaving play. So if you don't happen to have the Greymon X Antibody in your pile, this guy will provide you the same alternative at your ultimate level, which again is some nice redundancy. Most of the time when I see people playing this, they are going to be playing the full Greymon red list. Same with X Antibody, which can Digivolve onto this and get its special Digivolving inheritables. If you're playing these two, those are going to be taking up a lot of your ultimate spots. You're probably not going to be playing BT8 Metal Greymon, but of course you can. Most of the lists that I see, though, are not going to be playing this one with these. They're going to be playing the original EX1, just because it is cheaper to Digivolve and has some other nice perks to go along with it. But of course, we are not completely done. Moment of silence for the original Metal Greymon Alteris mode. This card, unfortunately, is kind of past its prime, but does still exist, so I just wanted to mention it. It is also 8,000 to play, 8,000 DP, Digivolves for 3 from a level 4, or for 1 from any level 5. When Digivolving, if you have Metal Greymon in its name in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, delete an opponent's Digimon 4,000 DP or less. Again, that's the old standard of 4,000 that most Greymon support had. And it's inheritable as well. This Digimon has Omnimon or Greymon in its name, gain 2,000 DP. You're probably noticing some redundancy with how a lot of these effects are worded. They are very samey in certain cases, which is totally fine. You're going to see a lot of stacking DP gains and things of that nature. As I mentioned, this card's kind of past its prime, but I was going to be sad if I didn't talk about it. I liked playing Wargreymon Tribal before BlackWargreymon ever existed. So even though this guy is out of his prime, I just wanted to mention it as kind of a rest in peace honorable mention. Now there is another black and red ultimate that a lot of the hybrid decks are going to be running, and that is BT8 Megadramon. Now Megadramon is 8 to drop, 8000 DP, again 4 from a level 4, black or red. When digivolving or when attacking on its inheritable, it has the exact same effect of delete an opponent's Digimon or Tamer with a play cost 3 or less. This is again another great source of board control. Now I personally in my black and red list played 4 copies each of Greymon and Megadramon. Depending on what my opponent is currently setting up, removing either Tamers or de-digivolving and popping things on board, both of these cards are great ways to control the board while you're still working on setting up. They're both also great sources of aggression, being very high at 8000 DP, which is above most other ultimates. So he's just another good option you can run. Again, being both black and red is super helpful for different tutoring effects this deck has access to. Another potential option for hybrid lists is Chimeramon. Now, I have never really liked Chimeramon above 2 copies in BlackWargreymon lists just because it can be a little kind of tricky to get multiple level 4s in play. However, if you do decide to go the Chimeramon route and you want to be a little spicy, maybe try considering some more spice like that security effect Greymon, giving you that extra level 5 body that you can then DNA Digivolve into Chimeramon with. For those of you unfamiliar, Chimeramon is 8 to play, 8000 DP, and is 4 to Digivolve. Now, Chimeramon is also a composite Digimon, has that in its traits, so it is able to get the cheaper Digivolution off of Deltamon, which does matter. So if you choose not to DNA Digivolve, you will be able to still Digivolve into him for cheaper if you have Deltamon in your deck. It can DNA Digivolve from any 2 level 4s of any color combination. However, you're going to want to have more colors than not. Ideally, like I said, you want to play him in black and red because he does benefit from having more colors in his pile. When Digivolving, you may place any level 5 or lower Digimon from your trash under this Digimon as its bottom Digivolution card. Then, up to 4 of your opponent's Digimon get minus 1000 DP for each of this Digimon's colors until the end of your opponent's next turn. So not only is this going to bring Digimon down into potential swing range where you can swing over them, it's also going to reduce DP on their blockers, and on their opponent's turn, they'll still have reduced DP, so they'll also be a lot lower when they go to attack. So there's, of course, a lot of utility here. It also has another effect that doesn't really come up in this deck, but it's just something to keep in mind if you do run into this card in other builds. On your turn, if this Digimon is also treated as having the colors, excuse me, this does matter. On your turn, this Digimon is treated as also having the colors of its Digivolution cards. So again, if you Digivolve a black and a red, it is considered having those 2 colors plus white, which is its base. So for its first effect, you would minus 3000 DP up to 4 of your opponent's Digimon. It also has the effect that while this Digimon has 4 or more colors, it gets plus 4000 DP on your turn, making it a 12,000 beater. So there's going to be a lot of decks like certain Armor Rush builds that do make use of that in order to get him up to that 12,000. But for our purposes, he's basically just a free bridge into our level 6s that can also do, again, some extra board control. Now, the last option I'm going to include here in our level 5 slot, which I don't think I'd see very many builds running, but this is my channel, and I'm going to include this card because I think it's spicy. That is going to be PT2 Greymon. Now, in my Machinedramon deep dive video, I scolded people who were trying to use this in Machinedramon because Machinedramon will not have reboot on the opponent's turn. However, one of our level 6s, Gaimon in particular, does have native reboot. So this Greymon is 8 to Digivolve, 7000 DP. It can only Digivolve onto a black Digimon, so make sure that if you do decide to try this card out, you are running the hybrid red and black build, so that way you will always be able to Digivolve on whatever is there. But he has an inheritable that says while this Digimon has reboot on your turn, it gets a security attack +1. So if you're deciding to run the hybrid black and red build and you don't want to run security attack +1 Greymon, this guy right here, you can instead opt to try this spicy boy to give your Gaimons that security attack +1 anyways. So that's just kind of a nice little spicy tech option. If you decide you want to, again, surprise your opponent with a little extra aggression, hey, maybe consider running that Greymon. All right, now this is going to be the part that I know most people are probably going to be looking the most forward to because this is where the really cool cards come into play. The big reason you want to run BlackWargreymon over Wargreymon X, and that is our level 6s. To begin, let's talk about the man himself, BT8 BlackWargreymon. This guy is 12 to play, 12,000 DP, and 4 to digivolve of a black or red ultimate level Digimon. When digivolving, if this Digimon has a red Digivolution card, you may choose some of your opponent's Digimon. If it has a black Digivolution card, choose some of your opponent's Tamers. Then you may choose chosen cards of play cost adding up to 6 or less and delete those cards. I'm going to word that a little bit better. So if he's got red sources, he can choose Tamers. Red sources, he can choose Digimon. Black sources, he can choose Tamers. Both, he can choose either or. Basically, you're going to choose combinations of Tamers and Digimon that add up to 6 play cost and delete them. This is a very, very unique and very cool effect. It's one of the few effects in the game that can actually remove Tamers off the field, which makes the deck very appealing to me personally because setup decks are very big right now. The fact that he can add up to 6 is also important because it means you can kill both Memory Tamers and Cool Boy, who again is pretty much everywhere right now. So there's advantages to running this guy over other X-Antibody lists. Now he also has an all turns effect once per turn, where if an opponent's Digimon is deleted, you can unsuspend him. So basically if he comes in and he is already suspended, let's say you aggressed with your level 5s, you can then pop some of your opponent's Digimon with his on Digivolving effect, unsuspend him, and get in for more damage. That also works on your opponent's turn if they swing into security. Let's say that he is suspended, but has the Greymon inheritable that gives him blocker. They swing into security, their Digimon dies, well, he gets to unsuspend, and now you have an extra blocker body. So a lot of utility there, not only for extra aggression, but utility on the opponent's turn. He is a super cool card, one of the more unique Mega level Digimon in the game. He's a super awesome card. I'm absolutely loving playing BlackWargreymon just for him. Now we're going to talk about the other big name in the deck, and that is Gaiyomon. Gaiyomon is kind of the other big name that you're going to be seeing right now. The BlackWargreymon lists, as I mentioned, are typically referred to as Gaiyomon these days because he is an extremely powerful card and combos very well with the original BlackWargreymon. So he is 13 to play, has 13,000 DP, which is becoming a little more common. That's kind of a good number for your Mega to have. He is 5 to Digivolve, but we're not worried about that, and I'm going to explain why. It has to do with his effects. First of all, he can Digivolve for 2 onto BlackWargreymon. You're probably not going to do that super often, but hey, you know, that's an option you can do. If you are ever in a situation where you need his security +1, that's something that you can do as an option. But first of all, he has an effect that says this card is also treated as having Greymon in its name. So again, even though it's called Gaiyomon, gets synergies with all of your Greymon abilities. He also has an inherent security attack +1 and inherent reboot. So just as by himself as a Mega, he's already got some really cool keywords that are going to help him put in a lot of extra aggression. And he has an on Digivolving effect, which is really the reason this card shines. When Digivolving, if this Digimon has a black Digivolution source, D-Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. You've heard me say D-Digivolve so many times in this video. I love that ability. It's still one of the strongest things to do in the game. And if this Digimon has a red Digivolution card, he also gets to Blitz. Now that effect is why even if you're running the X-Antibody version of this deck, you're not going to want to run the X-Antibody option card. The X-Antibody option is strictly there to help your Digimon Digivolve up into X-Antibody while cheating the Digivolution cost without having to actually pass your turn. So basically you would swing in with something. If you wanted to Digivolve up into something with X-Antibody, you can then do that. But you're still going to have to pay the Digivolution cost. So basically, rather than hard playing it and not be able to attack, you can, for instance, just swing with a level 5, go up into your Mega levels, and then get that higher level of aggression. Gaiyomon doesn't need this because he has inherent Blitz. The reason you're going to want to be playing X-Antibody isn't really there because Gaiyomon is already going to be blitzing in. So you can just Digivolve onto something that is unsuspended, and you'll still get to be able to attack. It's so, so cool. And because you have so many awesome options for inheritables, including piercing and the ability to attack unsuspended Digimon, with a D-Digivolving effect, he is going to be swinging over and helping to control the board in a way very similar to BlackWargreymon. As I mentioned, they complement each other very well. But Gaiyomon, as I mentioned, also has Reboot, so he has good synergies with your Greymon blocker inheritable, and he has security +1, so he's extra aggression. There's lots of cool ways to kind of utilize this card. As I mentioned, if you want to be super spicy, go with that VT2 Metal Greymon card as well. That about does it for Gaiyomon. As I mentioned, I can go on about him for a little bit longer, but he is just a super cool card. But we're going to talk about some of the other things that you could potentially do in your level 6 spots. Even though these are going to be the most common level 6s that you're going to see BlackWargreymon winning these days, there are other things you can do as well. One of the more common ones is still BT1 Wargreymon. This card still has a very unique effect that is extremely relevant. It is 12 to play, only 11,000 DP, but hey, you know, we're running DP gainers. It's 3 to Digivolve. When Digivolving, this Digimon also gains Security Attack +1, but only for the rest of this current turn. And on my turn, this Digimon also doesn't activate security skills of option cards that it checks. So basically, if you were to check things like Gaia Force, it wouldn't actually go off. You are able to swing pretty safely as long as you can get a decent amount of DP gain on this guy. Not a whole lot is actually going to stop all of his extra security checks. So I still do see plenty of BlackWargreymon lists that are going to be running this card. Since he does not Digivolve onto black, this was well before that was ever a thing, he's, of course, going to need to be in more red-centric decks. I see him used as curve toppers in certain lists that are playing the X-Antibody options, the Alteris modes, Metal Greymon X-Antibody. Those are going to be the kind of decks that you're going to generally see this guy in. Even if you're not mainboarding him, I would definitely at least recommend sideboarding him in either of the builds, because that inability to check security cards is definitely super helpful. Now, the last two cards I'm going to talk about are kind of sad just because they don't see a whole lot of play, but just like Metal Greymon Alteris mode, this is my channel and I want to talk about them. First of all, we have the promo BlackWargreymon, 11 to play, 11,000 DP, 3 to Digivolve, and has a main Digiburst effect where you can trash 2 of this Digimon's Digivolution cards to unsuspend him. So if you've given him a bunch of security buffs, this is a great way to end the game. I know before BT9 came out and Gaiamon took over, this was also a lot of BlackWargreymon decks other level 6 of choice. He lets you get some extra aggression by unsuspending multiple times. He's a really nice way to end the game. It's potentially even OTKing. But again, he has kind of fallen out of favor now that Gaiamon exists. And the last and saddest mega that I'm going to talk about is this poor guy. This is the alternate art because it's some of the coolest artwork in the entire Digimon game. This is the BT2 Secret Rare BlackWargreymon. It absolutely pains me that this card, even at his peak, didn't really see a lot of play. I tried to make it work myself, and when you get him to work, he is super, super awesome. But unfortunately, even at his best, he was really just a meme. He is 13 to play, 12,000 DP, and 4 to Digivolve. While your opponent has a Digimon with 10,000 DP or more in play, you can actually hard play him by reducing the cost to play him by 6. So basically, if your opponent has something 10,000 or higher, you can play him from your hand for just a cost of 7. So that's kind of neat. You don't really do that a whole lot, though, because there's a specific inheritable you want that combos absurdly well with this other effect. When attacking, if you attack your opponent's Digimon with the highest DP, unsuspend this Digimon not once per turn. So he is, for all intents and purposes, a potential board clear. Now, the reason this card is so cool, and the reason I am so sad he was not able to do things even at his peak, involves BT8 Metal Greymon. When this card came out, I thought this was going to be the cream of the crop. So the inheritable to attack unsuspended Digimon, with a Digimon that can unsuspend every time it attacks an opponent's Digimon with the highest DP, basically makes this BlackWargreymon a 2-card board clear. So basically, as long as he has DP enough to get over your opponent's current biggest Digimon, he will keep attacking. He'll attack the biggest, unsuspend, attack, unsuspend, attack, unsuspend until your opponent has nothing left, ending on an unsuspended BlackWargreymon that can then also attack into the opponent's security. It makes me so sad that this card was never able to see play. I think it's one of the most unique, most awesome cards in the game. Again, it does have some of just the coolest artwork that I think this game has ever seen. Absolutely phenomenal. So I'm very sad that this card has definitely passed its relevance, and its relevance was never really there to begin with. So sad story all around, but yeah, these are going to be the 5 primary cards that you're going to want to play if you're going to be playing a BlackWargreymon deck. These are going to be the ones that you're really building around. Leave Gaiamon out because I think he earns his spot up here. So we're going to go ahead and put him up here with BlackWargreymon. Next up, we're going to talk about potential level 7 options. Now, not all BlackWargreymon decks are running these. I actually don't run any in my current build, but there are absolutely some good reasons to be running these. Pretty much all of the ones you're going to want to run are going to be copies of Omnimon in various forms. Just because you may remember, a lot of our Agumon tutors also add Omnimon cards. A lot of our DP gains also count Omnimons. So most of our level 7s are going to want to be copies of Omnimon. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the most common you're going to see in BlackWargreymon by far. That is going to be the Blitz Omnimon, as it's colloquially known. It is the BT5 Omnimon with a when digivolving effect to Blitz, meaning it can attack even if your opponent has memory. Then, when digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon. So let's say that you have swung in with your level 6s, and they have no security left. Very basic play. You pay 4 memory, digivolve onto this. Its digivolving effect will unsuspend it, and then its Blitz will let it swing for game. It's a very common thing to do. You'll still see it in a wide range of different decks. So again, you're probably already pretty familiar with it. It does also have protection, which I actually forget about every time and again, where all turns, if an opponent's effect would delete this Digimon or return it to its owner's hand or deck, you may prevent it from leaving play by trashing a level 6 Digimon in this Digimon's Digivolution cards. So basically the same effect that is now on all of the X-Antibody Greymon cards, you can also get on him inheritably. So lots of abilities that will just keep him in play and make him extremely sticky. Now, other Omnimon cards that you can run, of course, there is still BT1 Omnimon, a little bit past his prime, but he's always going to be a good potential option. Able to delete an opponent's Digimon and all cards that share a name with that Digimon. Who knows that you could actually surprise an opponent by potentially wiping 2 stacks at once with this card, which is pretty cool. He also has an inheritable where, not inheritable, a non-attacking effect, where you can unsuspend this Digimon by returning 1 Digimon that is level 6 from its Digivolution cards to your hand, so it can also be a form of extra aggression there, much like your BlackWargreymons. Another cool option is going to be Omnimon Alter S, another card that's kind of past its prime, but is still going to be, a relevant option that you can consider depending on your local meta. When digivolving, you can trigger D-Digivolve 1 on all of your opponent's Digimon, again, a super powerful effect. Then, Then, if you have done that D-Digivolve, you can then delete all of your opponent's Digimon with 5,000 DP or less, so it's kind of a board wipe. Now, with the X-Antibody support, I think this is not in a great spot right now, because there's a good chance you're just going to D-Digivolve something into its same level. It's probably not going to drop super high in DP, but it is still a considerable option. Its when attacking effect lets you bounce a level 6 Digimon card from this sources to your hand to make him unblockable for the turn, so maybe that'll be relevant for you. Also in our options are going to be something along the lines of our final 2 Omnimons, which can actually digivolve onto other Omnimons, and those are going to be Omnimon Merciful Mode and Omnimon X-Antibody. Both of these cards are basically just here for some extra deletion effects. X-Antibody's got some other really nice effects. Both of these have abilities where you can digivolve them onto something with Omnimon in its name for a cost of 3, ignoring the requirements. They both have when digivolving effects. No, only Merciful Mode has a when digivolving. This one isn't on attack. When digivolving on Merciful Mode, for each card with Mega in its traits in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, delete one of your opponent's Digimon. Then, place 10 cards from your opponent's trash at the bottom of their deck in any order. That's, again, a pretty unique effect. Being able to pop multiple Digimon with no requirements, just destroying whatever you want, is going to be super good. And, since level 7s are also considered to be Megas, you can have a level 6, maybe 2 level 6s if you DNA or you X-Digivolved into Gaiomon. Maybe then you put Omnimon on top of Gaiomon, and then into Merciful Mode. Well, now you're going to be popping 3 different Digimon on your opponent's board. Definitely not something that's going to come up all the time, but it is definitely a play you are able to do. Now, Merciful Mode has another really cool effect, where at the start of your turn, if this card is still in play, trash the top card of this Digimon. If you do, trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. So basically, he will de-Digivolve himself, go back into your level 6s, which is completely fine. We have some pretty stellar level 6s that we are more than happy to keep around. And then you get a free trash on your opponent's security stack when that happens. So this card, I think, is actually pretty underutilized right now. So basically, you can end your turn by going up into him, destroy something, especially in an X-Antibody list. He's going to have built-in protection thanks to some of the inheritables. Then if it does make it back to him, he de-Digivolves back into your Stellar Megas and trashes a free security, which can potentially lead to game. So super, super cool. I think people are kind of sleeping on this card right now. I don't see him seeing super widespread play. I do, however, see quite a bit of play for Omnimon X-Antibody. Now, Omnimon X-Antibody has a when attacking effect, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with DP less than or equal to this Digimon's DP. Now, he does have 15. All of them do, aside from the Blitz, which does have 14. But he has 15,000 DP. So he'll basically be popping just about anything that they're going to have in play when he attacks. And on the opponent's turn, When your opponent's Digimon attacks, you can trash any 2 cards from this Digimon's Digivolution sources to end the attack. So he's also some built-in protection that'll keep your opponent from ending the game unless they have an effective way to handle him. Now, since the X-Antibody support has come out, this card has definitely seen an increase in play. He is super, super powerful. So yeah, that's going to be our level 7 options. There are, of course, plenty of other level 7s that you can run, but I would probably recommend sticking with Omnimons if you're going to be playing Blackwaygreymon, just because, again, you do get a lot of synergies with your cards having the name Omnimon, being able to add them to handoff of searches, and getting benefits from inheritables. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about Tamers. There's only a small number of Tamers I really see people running. The 2 bread and butter Tamers, though, that almost all lists are going to be playing. The first is Nokia Shiramine. This is a 3-to-play Tamer with an on-play that lets you play any Digimon with Agumon or Gabumon from your hand without paying its memory cost. Now, this does specifically require it to be an Agumon, so you cannot play Agumon X, because once again, that is not what the name of the card is. It's not Agumon, it is Agumon X Antibody. But it also has an effect where, when digivolving one of your Digimon into a Digimon card in your hand that has Garurumon or Omnimon or Greymon in its name, you may suspend this Tamer to reduce that Digivolution cost by 1. So she's going to let you bridge again up into your Megas and build stacks very quickly. The other card, which is extremely similar to Nokia, is Maki Himakawa. This is a new card from BT9 and is going to be the linchpin that kind of ties the black and red strategy together. So Maki here has an on-play that reveals the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add 1 Tapirmon from among them to your hand and a 2-color black card from among them to your hand. So she again is going to get some nice little combo synergies if you are playing both black and red. You'll potentially be able to add not only your Tapirmon from your rookie lineup, if you see one, but you can add any of your black and reds, which is going to be all of your champions, probably all of your ultimates, unless you're playing Chimeramon or some other combination, and both of your really big level 6s if you're playing these 2 in particular. So she's, again, a really nice card for tutoring, adds a little more extra redundancy to the deck. She also has a Your Turn effect. When one of your Digimon would digivolve into a 2-color black Digimon card, you may suspend this Tamer to again reduce that cost by 1. Now, as you may recall, not only are we playing BlackWargreymons, since Gaimon is considered a Greymon, and our level 6 slots, but if we're playing, or choosing to play it, we are probably also going to be playing, again, BT8 Metal Greymon. This card is both a Greymon and a 2-color black Digimon, so both of these Tamers are able to reduce the Digivolution costs digivolving into these lineups. So this, again, is going to give you some redundancy where you can digivolve into your upper levels very quickly. So these are going to be the 2 big ones that you'll play. A lot of decks do also run memory Tamers. Hero is going to be a very common one. 4 drop to play, set your memory to 3 at the start of the turn, and on your turn, when you attack with a Digimon that is level 5 or higher or contains Gamamon in its name, you may suspend this Tamer to have that Digimon gain plus 2,000 DP. Again, giving a little extra oomph to help you get over pesky bodies or keeping you safe swinging into security. Now, I do also see plenty of lists running the 4-drop Tai Kamiya that gives security plus 1, depending on having, I believe, 4 or 5 Digivolution sources. To be real with you guys, I don't have one. Don't really have any decks that really want to play that Tai. I personally do not play it in my Blackwaygreymon build, and he is currently, I think, sitting at $25. It's a very expensive Tamer these days, but that's another really cool option you can do. And if you are playing the X-Antibody line, why not? You can also throw in some cool boys if you really want to. It does add Gaiomon. Gaiomon is an X-Antibody Digimon, as well as any of your lower levels if that's the route you decide to go. It seems like everyone knows what Cool Boy does, but again, we'll go over it just for everyone's knowledge. He is a 2-drop Tamer that has an on-play. Reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You may add a Digimon card with X-Antibody and its traits, and an option card with X-Antibody from among them to your hand. As you may remember, I do recommend not necessarily playing the X-Antibody option. I think those slots are better used on other cards, so you're probably not going to see that, which is why you may, consider not playing Cool Boy in this particular list, but his other effect may still absolutely make it worth playing for you. It's up to your decision. When one of your Digimon digivolves into a same level Digimon with X-Antibody, you can suspend the Tamer to gain a memory and draw a card. Even if you're doing this in your raising area, this is still usable because it is not your Digimon's effect, it is a Tamer. He is everywhere right now. Again, he is very popular. You may choose to run this in BlackWargreymon, you may not, but it's an option, so I just wanted to throw it out there as something for you to consider. Now, before we wrap things up with this deck deep dive, I know this is another really long video, we're going to talk a little bit about option cards. One of the strengths BlackWargreymon and Greymon decks as a whole has, being in red, gives it access to some of the best removal options in the game. First one, tried and true. This is the Structure Deck one, and it's also been reprinted several other times since then. It's just Gaia Force. The staple removal spell where 8 memory, delete one of your opponent's Digimon. Security effect, do exactly that. You know what it does. You've seen what it does. It is always going to have relevance as just a good, generic, round-the-clock removal spell. But we have a lot of other options to talk about, and we're going to go over some of the others. Specifically, we are going to talk about the other 2 potential versions of Gaia Force you can run. If you are playing the X antibody list, you can consider Gaia Force 0. This is also 8 to play. However, if you control a Digimon with X antibody in its traits, you can reduce that cost by 2, so it's actually 6 to play. It has an effect where instead of just generically deleting an opponent's Digimon, you instead delete one of their Digimon with 13,000 DP or less. Then, one of your Digimon with Greymon in its name may attack your opponent. That second ability does come into handy every once in a while. If they have blockers, it basically, again, is going to let you swing for game. So if they have a blocker up, you only have one attacker, you can play this Gaia Force 0, get rid of the blocker, and then your Greymon can swing for game, even though you probably passed turn paying 6 or 8 memory. So that's kind of neat. That's also got a security effect that is identical to the original Gaia Force, just delete one of your opponent's Digimon if this gets checked in security. But I think one of the coolest option cards, centric to the BlackWargreymon archetype, is Dark Gaia Force. This is a super cool variant of the original Gaia Force that kind of combines it with another removal variety of red spells, several of which we're going to go over here in a second. This is a black and red option, so you do need to have both colors in play, or at least available to you in order to hard play it from your hand. But, excuse me. Its main skill lets you choose any number of your opponent's Digimon whose play cost adds up to 15 or less and delete them. So you can delete multiple things on the board as long as their total play costs add up to 15, or just delete one super tall thing. Choice is really up to you there. It does also have a security effect that deletes one of your opponent's Digimon with play cost 15 or less. So a little bit less generic, generically good as its on-play ability, but still super strong. This card is definitely worth considering if you're going to be playing both black and red, especially the full black-red variant. I believe I'm currently playing 3 copies of this particular Gaia Force as my removal spell of choice, just because it is so diverse. Other good options to consider are Crimson Blaze, 6 to play, although it gets reduced by 1 for each of your opponent's Digimon in play. It just deletes all of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, and then your opponent cannot play Digimon by effects until the end of their next turn, with a security that does that exact same main effect. So this is going to hit things that are lower to the ground, but it's also going to be a lot cheaper because it does reduce down from 6, which is already lower than the other options. Super good. I, again, would typically see people siding this card if not maining it. It is super strong. Atomic Megalo Blaster is another fairly new option from BT9. Another 6-drop that has the ability to choose any number of your opponent's Digimon whose total DP adds up to 10,000 or less and delete them. So think of it as kind of a powered-down Dark Gaia Force. It won't be quite as powerful, but it also doesn't have the black requirement and is going to be 2 less to play. We also have another older removal spell called Gigastorm. Again, I don't think that too many people are playing this one anymore. I think Crimson Blaze kind of took it over its spot, but it's 7 to play and has the effect to delete up to 2 of your opponent's Digimon with 8,000 DP or less. So this can hit taller bodies. It's going to delete most ultimates and can delete 2 cards that are going to be at that level or below. And its security skill is, again, just activating its main effect. So that's, again, something to consider. I think this is still a completely reasonable removal spell. The last option card I'm going to talk about is actually not removal, but is absolutely worth considering, and that is the card A Delicate Plan. This is a card I've started seeing a lot of BlackWargreymon lists run. Even though it is not removal, it is absolutely phenomenal utility for winning the game. It is a 1 memory red option with the ability where one of your Digimon gains. This Digimon does not activate security effects of any cards that it checks. With a security ability that just adds the card from your security stack to your hand. So this card is basically going to be serving the role of duplicating your abilities from BT1 or Greymon. So if you decide you are not able to or don't want to run this copy of Wargreymon, you can just run this option card instead. It's basically, again, letting you swing into security almost completely worry-free, where you're not going to check any pesky security effects, so as long as you don't run into something that has higher DP than you can just smash through security completely unabated. So this card is absolutely awesome. It is a very, very popular sideboard card right now. I have seen a lot of Wargreymon decks and BlackWargreymon decks start to main it just because it enables OTKs for only one memory. So if you're looking for something to help close the games out or give yourself a little more protection, if your meta has a lot of security control, consider a delicate plan. I don't think you'll be disappointed. But with that, guys, that is going to do it for another deep dive video. If you have stuck around this long, thank you all so much for helping my view times. I hope you guys have been able to learn something or maybe answered some questions you had about the BlackWargreymon archetype during this video. If you have any questions or want to know anything more about the archetype, please leave them down in the comments below. And if you're interested in hearing a deep dive video for another archetype, leave that down there as well. I'm always open to taking suggestions for video ideas. I mentioned before that I do some selfish content where I like to talk about decks and archetypes that I personally enjoy, but if people want to hear about other things, I'm more than happy to talk about those as well. So again, thank you all so much for joining me. I am an avid herpetologist. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you next time.